Good morning and good afternoon, everybody. Regardless of where you might be today, we recognize that you could have been doing anything with your time, but you saw fit to meet us here live for this impactful discussion. We are the Frontiers International Plainfield Area Club, and we welcome you to this month's installment in our Western Horn Cultural and Heritage Lecture Series, where today we will be discussing the topic, the great leaders of Africa, both contemporary and historic, with Dr. Akil Khalfani. At the Frontiers International Plainfield Area Club, we're in our 61st year of service. Each year, through our scholarship and educational programming, we help provide opportunities to local young people who wish to further their educational attainment beyond high school. We also host free seminars and workshops like this one to help educate and empower community members in key areas impacting our lives. Those including topics like the unspoken truths of Black history, financial literacy, and health and wellness. To enhance the lives of the most vulnerable among us, the Plainfield Frontiers Area Club also provides key mentorship programs to young men and women throughout the region. We work alongside community members to fight for social and economic justice and equal human rights. Lastly, we provide scholarships to help deserving high schoolers, scholars, pursue a college degree or professional certification. We are the Frontiers International Plainfield Area Club, and we stand for advancement through service. To help us in our efforts, if you would like to help us in furthering these initiatives, you can do so by donating toward our scholarship fund or any of the initiatives that I just mentioned. To do so, you can donate using Zelle at area code 732-470-4207, or by PayPal in the name of our treasurer, jess.marshall@verizon.net. And lastly, you can do so by mailing your checks or money orders to P.O. Box 428 in the great Queen City of Plainfield, New Jersey, 07061. Again, I thank you for joining us today. It gives me great pleasure to present to all of you, introducing to some and just reintroducing to others our speaker for today. Dr. Akil Khalfani. He is the host and executive producer of The Pulse, a televised talk show that explores the diversity of the African global experience and has been since 2011. Dr. Khalfani is also a candidate for the U.S. Congress representing New Jersey's 10th Congressional District. He recently founded Vote Ed, which is a nonprofit organization dedicated to voter education and registration. His community service efforts have been honored on numerous occasions. He was awarded the Changing Our Community Award in 2021 by Eyes Wide Open Hope. In 2019, Dr. Khalfani was selected as a Presidential Elevate Fellow for the Council on International Educational Exchange. He received the Citation Award from the National Sorority of Phi Delta Kappa in 2017 for his outstanding contributions in the field of education and humanitarian deeds. He became the Pan-African Diaspora Ambassador to the Ooni of Ile-Ife, Nigeria in 2016, and was awarded the Chair Academy's 2016 International Exemplary Leadership Award. Dr. Khalfani has been recognized for his tireless community work by the U.S. Congress, the New York and California State Senates, the New York and New Jersey State Assemblies, and several municipalities and countries or counties in the New Jersey and New York State area. He was commissioner on the West Orange Human Relations Commission and was the vice president of the West Orange African Heritage Organization. Ambassador Khalfani was an advisor to the UNESCO Center for Global Education and previously served as co-chair for the Education Committee of the City of Newark's African Commission and served on the Essex Newark Coalition to End Homelessness. He served as president and vice president of the Board of Trustees for Adelaide L. Sanford Charter School. Dr. Khalfani earned a PhD and a master's degree in sociology from the University of Pennsylvania, from which he also earned a graduate certificate in African studies. While living in South Africa, he studied at the University of Pretoria. He earned his bachelor's degree also in sociology from the University of California, Santa Cruz. His areas of expertise are Africana studies, race relations, social stratification, and developing solutions to social problems. To connect with Dr. Khalfani, you can do so by phone at area code 973-652-7132, email at drkhalfani@gmail.com, or online at akilkhalfani.com. Ladies and gentlemen, without any further ado, as we prepare to jump into our discussion, I invite you to join the conversation. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, or need for clarification, please feel free to drop your notes in the chat. As we near the end of his discussion and presentations by Dr. Khalfani, we'll take questions from the chat and share them for our presenter to answer directly live for you today. Without any further ado, ladies and gentlemen, join me as we welcome to today's broadcast the world-renowned Dr. Akil Khalfani. Dr. Khalfani, welcome, Dr. Khalfani. How are you?
Well, good afternoon. How's everybody doing today?
Very good, sir. Very good, sir. It certainly is a privilege to have you join us today. I am looking forward to learning something, as well as being reminded of things that are impactful still today, because we'll be talking about this phenomenal topic, the great leaders of Africa, contemporary and historic. So I'll jump out of your way. I'll turn this audience and broadcast over to you, sir. And again, thank you and welcome.
Okay, thank you very much, brother. I really appreciate you. I really appreciate the fact that Frontiers International has invited me here, and the city of Plainfield. I'm honored to be here. We had the opportunity to have a conversation a few years back. I think it was all the way back in 2014 or 16 or something like that. And so I'm excited to be here again today. And I honor you, President Jenkins, and thank you for all that you do to keep this organization moving forward.
Indeed. Thank you so much, sir.
Yes.
And the floor is yours.
All right. So if we just pull up the screen here, I want to just start off by saying that, I'm really a humble servant of the masses, and the laundry list that you heard is the work of not me, but of so many people before me. So, we sprinkle little libations on the floor as we pay tribute to those who came before me, those to the north, the south, the east, and the west. We know that we're here because others have been here before us. We know that we're here because of the sacrifices that those have come before us, and that we walk in the footprints of those who've come before us, and we honor their struggles and sacrifices and successes. And so today we're here to talk about a little bit about their successes, maybe some of their trials and tribulations, and then to kind of usher in where we fit within the context of that. So here we see in the backdrop here, we have the Great Pyramids of Giza at the Giza Plateau in Kemet, or what some people today will call Egypt, or that's what the Greeks called it, but we called it Kemet. And so we still call it Kemet today. So let's begin to kind of roll through this a little bit. When we think about who we are and how we get here, ask the question, where do we start? Where do our African leaders start? And we oftentimes want to start naming names first of people whom we've heard of or known, but I suggest we start a little closer to breast, right? Let's look at who made you who you are. And so let's talk about your parents, your grandparents, your aunts and uncles, and other folks who may have influenced you. So I'm going to start off talking about my parents, right? So that if we think about all the great leaders, we have a one of the challenges that we have is that we talk about them in isolation, as if they are one of the groups I'm in talks about. We refer to them almost as orphans, and I suggest to you that we need to contextualize who they are and their families, right? So I'm going to start off with my father and my mother, Harriet and Bobby Perry, right? Who we have the four of us, four children, and they worked hard and raised us and did the things necessary to elevate us and to get us to school. And they didn't have bachelors and masters and PhDs like I do, but they had their own bachelors, masters, and PhDs. And when I got mine, they got theirs. So those are the things we have to really kind of contextualize about who are these leaders that we're referring to, and where do they sit within the context of our collective consciousness? Where do they sit within the context of us being great and understanding that we are great, but we came from greatness, right? And so then we understand that greatness from which we came, that made something else. And even though there may have been trials and tribulations there may have been some inconsistencies, somebody's, did or said negative things, but how did we emerge out of that is the thing. So if someone in your family or in your neighborhood or in your school had negative things that they pushed or put onto you, how did you respond to that? Did that determine your future? Did that determine your altitude? Or was there something else that was deeper inside of you? So I moved from there. I say that my grandparents, Elsie and John House, right? They had 10 children. And so then those 10 children all had all kinds of different things that they did in life and places that they helped us to think about. And they set examples about really what we should do in terms of building that out, right? In terms of building our family, our legacy. And everything is not perfect, but there's a foundation, and maybe we pick up things along the way. We pick up things both from the things that we should do and the things that we shouldn't do. So I thank my grandparents for that. I think my biological grandparents on my father's side, my biological father's side, that was Elsie and Roy Burnett, right? So that Elsie and Roy Burnett, my grandmother would come to my house when I lived in Philadelphia, and when we lived in here in West Orange now, and on Easter, she wanted to always come on Easter, and she would drop some gems during Easter, and that would be a great time for me and my children to think about the world and think differently, to see what it was that their trials and tribulations that they went through, to understand how and what we're going to do, what I'm going to strive to leave as an example for my children. And I'm not saying that I'm perfect, right? My children might have some things to say about me. I'm sure they do. But I strive to be a better man every day, right? Then there was Don Eric House, my uncle. He always pushed me to understand who I was as an African person. And he didn't have all the answers, but he always pushed me. And then I had another uncle named Eddie. We called it Uncle Eddie. And Eddie would always say to me, he would say, Happy Kwanzaa. And he would say Happy Kwanzaa at different times of the year. And he didn't really even understand what Kwanzaa was, but he kept putting that bug in my ear, right, about Kwanzaa. And eventually I went on to learn about Kwanzaa and to do lots and lots of Kwanzaa celebrations at my house and over the years. And then there was my Aunt Janet, who was someone who was very spiritual, but also very family oriented, and always wanted to pull the family together and help me to lock in the ideas about family, right? And then I had a couple of friends of mine who I really kind of I would say came to age with, right? First was Zizwe. Man, Zizwe was such a good brother, or still is such a good brother. He is the current director of African Studies at Lincoln University, and always pushed me to, him and his wife pushed me, Sister Evelyn pushed me to understand and think about African history and culture. Who pushes you to think about who you are? Who pushes you to understand your African history and culture? And if not, then who do you push, right? We've got to see that there's a symbiotic relationship not just a bunch of names, but people, places, things that move us. So when we talk about what the great, I'm gonna go back up to this other slide real quick. When we talk about the great leaders of Africa, we have to remember that you're the great leader of Africa, that I'm the great leader of Africa, because we're Africans. Some of us get confused and think that since we live in the United States that we're not Africans, but you're African. We Africans, right? I don't care if you're from Haiti or from Jamaica or from Brazil or from Nigeria or South Africa or Senegal or the US or Canada. We all, as I think it was Bob Marley says, it might not have been Bob Marley. One of the reggae songs, it says that if you're a black man, you're African, or a woman, or whatever. The point is that we have to recognize that our African lineage is the place that situates us in who we are, and not just us, but really the world, right? I've been reading a lot of stuff lately, and now not only the archaeologists say that the foundations of humankind come from Africa, the geneticists say that the foundations of humankind come from Africa. The linguists say that foundations of humankind come from Africa. So then when you have all of this evidence, you know that you come from the beginnings of the beginnings. And if you come from there, then you have to look at yourself in the mirror or the reflection in the Oshun River and say, what is it that I am? Who is it that I am? And how do I become the great leader that I'm supposed to be? Because your greatness is dependent upon what you both know, your Sankofa, right? We have to go back and get it, right? Go back and get that which we are, understanding who we are and from where we've come. And when we do that properly, that it's okay to go back and get that which you've forgotten. But the elders tell us that this life is one of remembering. And if we understand that we know that tied to us, right, this great African leader tied to us is in your DNA, is your connection to all of those thousands and thousands of ancestors. In your blood is your connection to that, right? The blood that you have is a continuation. Your DNA is a continuation of something that existed millions of years ago. And if we understand the relationship and the connection that we have to that embedded in you is how to build the pyramids. Embedded in you is how to make the connection to the languages of ancient Africa. I don't care if you're talking about Swahili or you're talking about Metanetra or you're talking about Yoruba. All of these great languages take you back, right? They go back to this origin, and then you go back further than that, and you go speak the languages of the Sans with the clicks in them, right? They say no, they say ah, right? What is the click? The click is a vibration, and all these vibrations are the things that help us to get to where we are today. So let's keep moving through this, right? So Brother Tukufu Zuberi was introduced to me by Zizwe, and he was a good friend and a mentor in my graduate program, and he helped me to travel to Africa, right? So I went to South Africa in 1994. Was my first time in Africa, and he had me go there to do some research, and we worked on some projects and published some things, and I'm thankful for that. And when I got married, he was in the wedding. So I'm thankful for all of those connections and relationships that helped us to get to the next place. And brother, when I was an undergrad, brother Lefa Malane was a good friend of mine from South Africa, and he helped me to start developing and understanding this love and passion for Africa that was in me, that I didn't always know all of was in me. But we also did some things protesting for divestment in South Africa, and I began to learn the movement and the ways of what that was all about, right? So here's South Africa right here, right? I've been to South Africa many times now, but when we look here at this picture, this is a picture of Table Mountain at the top, and Table Mountain was and is a beautiful place. But when I went there for the first time, what I had to do is that I went right to the top up here. There's like a little restaurant up top here, and I had to sit down and pour libations because these are places that Africans in South Africa couldn't go for thousands of years, or hundreds of years rather, uh, during apartheid. I'm sure maybe some hiked up and went there anyway, but there would have been consequences had they been caught. But the point is that all these places that I traveled are places that made it possible. But part of that travel is because of this picture that you see over in the lower left corner, and that's the struggle. This is in Pretoria, South Africa, and this is when I was there, and there was struggles going on while I was there. People marching and protesting in the streets. The picture over here that you see on the lower right is a picture of folks protesting and marching right in West Orange, because I put those there together because I want you to understand that the struggle continues, right? There's a continuity between what happened with the struggle for George Floyd and what was happening in South Africa. All the beauty you see in South Africa, comes about because of the labor of those Africans who oftentimes didn't have an opportunity to participate in those things, not until recently. So we asked the question. Here's another picture. This is a picture in Nigeria, right? We may not even think that this is what Nigeria looks like, but this is Nigeria. So we asked the question of, who are these great inventors? Who are these great Africans? And what are the great Africans remembered for? So here's an example. You have Henry Blair, who was recognized for the first patent for the United States. And he was making a device, a tilling device. And of course, you see the time frame, so that he did this in a time frame when Africans were still enslaved. He was from 1804 to 1860. So even though he had the ability and the wherewithal to make this invention, and I forgot to double check, though, I'm sure he was probably free at the time. But the point is that him making this plow made it possible for them to elevate the agricultural work that they were doing. And the point is that here we had somebody who had the wherewithal to create and invent something that enabled him to do something to take things to the next level. So what are the things that we're doing to help us to elevate, to take things to the next level? We've got to be those great inventors. And so I moved from all the way up in the 1800s all the way back. So we're going to bounce back and forth for a little while. So it's like a dance, right? We're moving back and forth. So as we move back, though, we move way, way back. We move back and we ask the same question. What are great leaders remembered for? And let's look at Imhotep. Imhotep was an architect. He was the designer of the step pyramid. He was a surgeon, and you can see his surgical tools. He was a politician. He helped to advise the Nasut Bidi, or what the other folks call the pharaoh. And so that Imhotep, there are many Imhoteps in many ways, so that you are an Imhotep, right? How committed are you to the studying of the things that you need to do? It's not just that you wake up one morning and you're a great leader. It's that you put in the work to become a leader, and that you have the consistency of being a great leader. Imhotep, over the time that he lived, that he did more things over time. It wasn't just that those things happen instantly. It wasn't just that we speak his name today because he did one of those things. It's because he did all of those things. And we've got to remember that we collectively have got to be responsible for all of those things that are in our purview that we can have influence over. Even when we have opposition, that we have to recognize that in facing the opposition that we face, that we shouldn't allow things to impede our movement forward. We shouldn't allow things to stop us, that they may slow us down. Harriet Tubman was slowed down, but she wasn't stopped, right? She was someone who, and I lock her essence. And some people say there's questions about the story, and that's all fine. But there wasn't just one Harriet Tubman. You see, there was lots of folks who were struggling and striving to get their freedom, striving to help others to get free. And so then we have to look like her to say, in each era, who were the people, the Africans, who helped make that that striving possible? Who made it possible, and when, and where, and how? And so then the question continues to be, what strivings are you doing? What are the things that you're doing to change the reality of those who come after you and those around you? Let's not just only put the responsibility on the next generation, because we still got time here. Your time is not done. My time is not done. So therefore, what are we doing right now? Right? If you're talking about someone who's a great African leader, what makes you a great African leader? Here is another example. I'm going to do a couple of inventors because I think they're important. Because really, let me go back for a second. Do you not think that Imhotep was an inventor? He may not have had quote unquote patents, but could he have not patented, if there was such a thing, on how to build the step pyramid? Could he not have patented these tools that are up here that you see and more in these European museums? Could they not have patented the making of papyrus paper? But they're inventors nonetheless. So Garrett A. Morgan was a great inventor, and I'm gonna go right to this real quick. What he invented was the stop sign, and I was recently in Burkina Faso, and before that I was in South Korea and in South Africa. And what do you think I saw in all those places? I saw a modernized version of the stoplight, of the stop sign. And so, but we tribute that to Garrett A. Morgan, right? And this brother who invented it also invented the gas mask. So, the point here is that what is the thing that dictates greatness, right? Who were Garrett A. Morgan's parents? What created the conditions for him to be great? What made it possible for him to think outside the box when nobody else did it, right? I mean, think about it. How many years were there people dying because of car accidents before Garrett A. Morgan created the stop sign? How many people died in fires and because of smoke inhalation? But this is the irony of it, right? That sometimes even when we as Africans make things, that other folks are still so against us and our creations and the things that we bring to the table, that that they're unwilling to utilize them. So you have Garrett A. Morgan, who had invented the gas mask, and at a time that it was needed, that people didn't want to use it because did it, right? I mean, so when you think about the impact of something like that, and the the possibility that thinking is something that's real, then you have to wonder, what are the thinkings of people who would not use things that are in their best interest. But we have that same scenario today when we look at the pushback on voting rights, when we look at even affirmative action, right? Something as seemingly as simple as the idea of affirmative action, that everybody should have equal access, and all the folks who's fought for that kind of thing. But the greatest beneficiaries of affirmative action are European American women, but they themselves fight against it. And the question is why, right? How many people, when we're looking at stuff like this stop sign, this signal, know that it came from an African person? But that's your and my responsibility. Mark Dean, Dean would own 3 of the original 9 patents that all PCs are based on, right? So this brother was someone who was keen on inventing uh, technology, and he worked at IBM. And then you have, of course, you have the sisters who were working in other places that also led to great inventions and space travel and all these different things. But it took people thinking outside the box. So when we say great Africans, we have some. Now we're bouncing back to the continent. Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, president of Liberia. Here's a sister who came to the table in a place, and I have a bunch of students from Liberia. After Africans had been colonized and then moved back to the continent, to Liberia and Sierra Leone after slavery, that there was some tensions between Africans there in those places. But then ultimately you end up having this sister who became president. So what made it possible for her to do that was that this tension that arose, and that the strivings to move beyond that tension, that she brought something else to the table that wasn't there. And as we think about great leaders, I want you to think about what are the roles that they play. How do we begin to understand what a great leader is, right? When we think about a Fannie Lou Hamer, right? When we think about an Ella Baker, when we think about a Sojourner Truth, when we think about all those women who are also great leaders, like Sarah Leaf Johnson, right? So those women brought something to the table and pushed the envelope in ways that made people think differently. There's even a sister who is, many people think, when they think of the bus boycott and people sitting on the bus stopping and not wanting to get up, they think immediately of Rosa Parks, and they should. But they also should think of Claudette Colvin, right? That there was other people who had the same kind of strivings and struggles, and refused to buckle under the pressure of racism and white supremacy. And so then we've got to recognize them along the way, because these women are powerful agents of social change. They're powerful thinkers in the struggle. I brought some of my friends here with me today, my books. And one of them, I want to read a quote to you. In fact, we're talking about women right now. And this particular quote is just a short piece, but it tells you the thinking of women as they were striving and struggling to bring about change. This is from Amy Jakes Garvey. This was one of Marcus Garvey's wives. And she makes this quote here, and she says that Africa must be for Africans. The Negro everywhere must be independent. God being our guide, Mr. Black Man, watch your step. Ethiopia's queens will reign again, and her Amazons protect her shores and people. Strengthen your shaky knees and move forward, or we will displace you and lead on to victory and glory. That's an interesting story, right? Because that's not the first time that's been said by a woman or by women, right? You have it in Ghana. You had Ya Santiwa, who was pushing the envelope, and that when the British were there and wanting to take the golden stool, and there was a fight, and she didn't see the men standing up, and she stood up, and she said that we can't allow this to happen. Of course, unfortunately the British captured her, but we can think about the fact that someone like her set the tone and tenor for the resilience of African men and women in Ghana and elsewhere, right? So you had all of these women who were the pushers of the envelope, right? Helped us to think more broadly about how and why and when we need to strive for greatness. And as we strive for greatness, that push that we have is something that that the sisters bring to the table. That it's a collective push, and that as we look at that collective push, we see that there's strivings all around, and that when we look at the ways in which we're trying to move the needle, that moving that needle is something that we have to do that creates discomfort sometimes. And so we raise the question about are we comfortable being uncomfortable? Right? Are we comfortable being uncomfortable? And I think that when we look at these sisters who helped us to think about and push that envelope, that they were ones who were able and willing to be uncomfortable in their strivings, right? If you look at Ida B. Wells, who was fighting lynching, you look at um, Mary McLeod Bethune, all of these women pushing the envelope for us, helping us to think broader and wider about our struggles, and helping us to think deeper about them, right? Because when we think that there is a when we think that there's just one person or one thing moving us forward, we failed in our own analysis about what are the things that pushed us forward. That when you think of um, a Fannie Lou Hamer, right? She not only was pushing for women's rights, but she was pushing for rights for African people, right? But she also was making it known about during the women's movement that even the other folks, primarily European women, needed to think differently about their own struggle, right? So she questioned them and the things that they were pushing for, because that the way that they were pushing for it was really for their own benefit and not holistic. And I think that that's one of the major things that we can think about when we think about uh, Africans pushing us to do things differently. And we look at great African women, great African men who are leaders. Uh, one person who I always thought was going to be a president, or I was hoped that would be president one day, but unfortunately she never was Winnie Mandela. Uh, I look at strong women alive during my time, and I always go back to Winnie Mandela. Because when you look at South Africa and the struggle in South Africa, if you really think about it, the name Nelson Mandela, how did Nelson's name, um, how was it kept alive, right? How was all the time, the 27 years that Nelson Mandela was in prison, how do we know about him? He wasn't the only person in prison, right? There was many other people. If you go to South Africa, you go to Robben Island, you'll go to the prison sites and you'll hear the names and the stories of lots of other people. But why did we know Nelson Mandela so well? And I would argue that we knew Nelson so well because we knew Winnie so well. And then Winnie kept Nelson's name alive and the struggles that he and his comrades were in alive. And so the trials and tribulations, the struggles that she went through and raising her family during those 20 was tough, when you think about it. And the question becomes, what were the forces present to make sure that there was no Nelson and Winnie long term after he got out of prison and he became president. But think about what might have happened in South Africa had Winnie Mandela become president, right? I think we might have seen a different kind of reality because her strivings, her pushings were, I would say, a little more aggressive, and necessarily so, because the times and the conditions necessitated more aggressive times. That's why the ANC and the PAC, they all had military wings, right? ANC had with Umkhonto Wesizwe. And so then that was a military wing that was involved in sabotaging infrastructure, right? They weren't military in that they weren't trying to go toe to toe in war with the Afrikaners, but they were destroying power grid or other kinds of things in order to make an impact. And so that thinking that took them there was something that they saw themselves in a situation where there was no um, easy negotiation of for the transition of power or for the sharing of power. And since those things didn't seem to be possible, they began to strive in other ways. But that striving, once again, didn't happen in isolation, right? So that the ANC and the PAC and other organizations were fighting in ways that created greatness. That you had a Steve Biko who emerged in all the struggles. Uh, you had so many folks who emerged as great leaders, and it goes back to my previous question about how what are the tenets of a great leader. I'm gonna go back up to that real quick just so that uh, wanna, what are great leaders remembered for, right? And so what are the things that we want to think about that these people who I'm sharing with you now, what are they remembered for? Well, not only what are they remembered for, but what are the strivings and struggles that got them to those places. So next we have Thomas Sankara, right? Sankara was a great Pan-Africanist in Burkina Faso. And I just recently visited Burkina Faso in January, and I had the opportunity to visit the Thomas Sankara memorial, and they had they have lots of other memorials for those who were assassinated during previous uh, coups or attempts to change the government. And so when we think about that, though, Sankara, one of the things that's important about his leadership is that he was someone who not only was a Pan-Africanist, but also pushed the idea of developing things in Africa, right? He wanted people to wear African clothes that were developed that were developed locally in Burkina Faso. He wanted people to really stand up for something that was bigger than them as a Burkinabe, right? That it wasn't just about them, but it was about as Nkrumah would say, that Ghana is not free until all of Africa is free. So Sankara had the same vision, right? There's lots of when we think about the folks who were the great leaders in Africa, we have to definitely talk about the Pan-Africanists, right? Sankara, Nkrumah, Touré, and the list goes on. These are great folks who pushed for something that was greater than them, greater than their tribal affiliation or cultural or ethnic affiliation, than their national affiliation. And so then the thing began to emerge as to what are the ways in which we have to bring this into being. How can we create the places and spaces that we want to create if we're going to do so in a way that pushes that envelope? So one of the folks who we can think about that was right in line with Sankara's thinking is Du Bois. And Du Bois, I have a typo on here. It says the president of Liberia. I apologize for that. He certainly wasn't the president of Liberia. But Du Bois was uh, a great Pan-Africanist, right? He attended the first Pan-African conference that was organized by Henry Sylvester Williams, and that was in 1900. And then not only did he organize, once again, so if anybody's watching this, you see I have an error on my slide. Du Bois was not, I can't correct it right now in the middle of presentation, but Du Bois was not the president of Liberia. That's an error. That Du Bois, anyway, was, he participated in the first, second, third, fourth, and fifth Pan-African Congresses. And at the first Pan-African conference, he even was engaged in, he wrote up some the statements about it, right? So he wasn't 100% in 1900, because he was kind of checking some things out. He wasn't as, maybe, I don't think he was as committed as Henry Sylvester Williams was, right? So maybe as Martin Delany was, but he understood the value of it, and he wrote some stuff about it. And this is where he kind of comes up with this idea that the problems of the 21st century is the problem of the color line. So Du Bois was keen on it, and he had just finished writing the Philadelphia Negro, and he was preparing to write some other stuff, right? Lots and lots of books over the years that Du Bois wrote. So he was a eminent scholar. But he was plagued by white supremacy. He wanted to get a job at a major institution, but as a great African leader, he was not. Great African thinker, he was not able to do so. He got a job at, I think he was at Fisk for a while, but he was at the Atlanta University. Well, now it's Atlanta University. But what he created there, though, was the Atlanta Sociological Institute, right? And so then he created a way of doing research that no one had done before. So he's one of the pioneering sociologists. I would say he's the father of American sociology, because all the other institutions like University of Chicago and others, even though some of the schools were there, they didn't develop to their eminence until the 1920s and 30s and later. And so then, but Du Bois was already on point, already thinking about doing 100-year study, right? Du Bois was way ahead of time. He was a scholar, an activist, a journalist. He gave up his U.S. citizenship and moved to Ghana. He did songs. He wrote in newspapers and magazines. He was the editor of The Crisis, which was the newspaper for the NAACP, and he was, and so that just these different things that he was engaged in provided food for thought for us about how to begin to start thinking about doing those things. And then we compare him, though, to his contemporaries and think about where we might be if he and his contemporaries even more so employed the ideas that they had, right? So that his contemporaries were Booker T. Washington and Marcus Garvey, and oftentimes at odds, right? And so when you look at Garvey was the preeminent Pan-Africanist, even though he didn't use the word, right? Garvey was pushed by Amy, right? Amy was a preeminent scholar and thinker about African people, and so then together, the challenges between Du Bois and Garvey and Booker T are something that I really want us to focus on when we think about African leaders, because if we focus on them properly, we can actually transform our place that we sit in the world today. We could transform our position politically, economically, socially, if we understood or understand the trials and tribulations and the conflict between Du Bois, Booker T, and Garvey. Because they had some heinous words that they would say against each other, and I don't need to repeat them here. You can look them up if that's what you're interested in. I'm more so interested in the thread that connects us. I'm more interested in the tools that they provide and or could have provided had they worked together, right? Had we had a more effective understanding of Ubuntu, had we had a more effective understanding of Iwapele, had we had a more effective understanding of the Medu Nefer, right? We might have approached things differently if you were Du Bois and I was Garvey and somebody else was Booker T. We might have approached things differently, because what Booker T did that was important and still standing is that his institution, right? That he has a physical institution that still exists today. And those students learned how to make their own buildings and bricks. So the buildings that are there, at least the oldest ones, were built by the students. And so at Tuskegee University, right? And so Du Bois didn't have the same kind of institution building in that same way as Booker T. But had they had those things together, then we might have seen a different kind of outcome. We have to look, and this is true on the continent, the islands, in South and Central America, Brazil, wherever, that we have to pay attention to the agents of divide and conquer, right? Who divides and tries to divide and conquer us as African people? What are the forces that are there that make that possible, and how do we understand the possibility of that, and how do we prevent it, right? And what we learn from a Du Bois is that he had an uncanny way of understanding the position of African people globally. He had an uncanny way of understanding the continuation of our struggles. You see, the Du Bois of the 1900s is not the Du Bois in the 1960s. And some people, some of us, want to focus only on the Du Bois of the 1960s because Du Bois said some heinous things about Garvey and other folks because of what he was going through and what he was trying to get into, so that some of his rhetoric was divisive. But that wasn't the Du Bois that moved to Ghana. So as we live our lives, how can we truncate or shrink down though that lifetime experience of a Du Bois in our own selves, right? What are the transitions that we need to make as thinkers, as scholars, as activists, as elected officials, as business people, as teachers and professors, as garbage men and women, as the people who pick up the trash, as the people who are the ones who are sweeping the floor, the people who are the police officers? How do we think differently, understanding what Garvey, Du Bois, Imhotep, what they brought to the table? That's really our task here today, is not to have a whole bunch of names, but to think about and change the way we actually engage in the world and with our brothers and sisters. I'm not saying it's easy, but I'm saying that it's necessary and it's possible. And so as we strive to bring about change, as we strive to rethink our ways of living and doing, then that tasks us with actually coming up with a different reality. Because Garvey's organization, I mean, look, the UNIA still exists. Now there's some conflict maybe in the UNIA about different branches, but the UNIA still exists. The ideas of Garvey exist. And we don't just get from Garvey and his movement. We get a Malcolm X from Garvey, right? That Malcolm X's parents, his mother and father, were Garveyites. And so that we have a Malcolm X and a Nation of Islam that grew to what it was, is that part of its growth has to do with what Malcolm brought to the table. And what Malcolm brought to the table wasn't just his street running days, it was his training from his parents, his experience from the what his parents went through. And when we see those things, then we begin to see Malcolm differently. Malcolm is not an orphan that we see, once again, we in the organization that I'm doing some work with, we talk about that we see our great leaders as orphans. We don't connect them to their family, to their children, to their spouses, to their other folks around them, right? Like I mentioned to you before, Zizwe, I mentioned to you Tukufu, I mentioned to you my grandparents, and so on and so forth. Those are the people who shape who I am. Those are the people who inform me. Those are the people who push me. They may not think the way I think about them, those things, but they aided my thinking in the direction that I am today. Just like Du Bois, right? So Du Bois is reading the works of Du Bois shaped the way I think. Reading the works of Garvey, watching the documentaries on Garvey shaped the way I think and what I do. Uh, Watching and studying Booker T it shapes the way some of the things that I do, both in the ways that things I do and don't want to do, right? So I'm looking holistically at them, not just any one thing, because they're dynamic people, and so I want to assess the totality of them. And their bodies of work are so vast that I haven't gone through all of their work, so I don't profess that, but I profess that I'm studying them, that I'm ongoing studying, and sometimes I have to reread things that they've written or hear a speech that they've given again, right? I may listen to Malcolm 2, 3, 4 times. May listen to something by all of these other speakers over and again, because I want to really get a more in-depth understanding of their ways of thinking, of their ways of solving problems. And so as we're doing those things ourselves and we're solving problems in the world, or we're striving to solve problems, who are the people you're looking up to? Those that are living and those that are past. Kwame Nkrumah, right? Pan-Africanist, scholar, activist, went to Lincoln University, right there where Brother Zizwe is right now. And so then someone who came through the U.S. and developed some of his ways of thinking and doing, and saw that the independence of his country was not adequate in and of itself, right? And we have to say, well, if not just the countries, if the independence and the success of our businesses is it adequate for them to be successful on their own? So if you have you're watching the Super Bowl this weekend and you're watching those commercials and maybe Jay-Z is part of the production of them, is it adequate is he doing that alone, or has he got a team? Right? And is that team wide enough to bring about transformation? And I'm not saying that it is or it isn't. I'm just raising the question as to how we navigate our spaces, right? And so then you may have a business in your own neighborhood or your community or your state. And what do you do with your business that changes the reality for your community, that changes the reality for African people? The living legacy that you create by what you do is the thing you have to think of. Kwame Nkrumah had a living legacy, right? The things that he was working on while he was alive, the changes actually happened. He was a preeminent Pan-Africanist, went to some of the Pan-African congresses with Du Bois. Here we have somebody who now, after the coup and coming back into power, then tore down some of his statues, that you see that now those things have been changed, and there's a different legacy. And you see that there's other folks who are taking up in the mantle and utilizing his thinking, the ideas behind him, right? To talk about how we move forward. There's an organization called the CPP who's pushing on Garvey. I mean on Nkrumahism, and thinking about how Nkrumah thought about the ideas of Pan-Africanism, but they're not static, right? They talk about Pan-Africanism from the perspective, and they involve not just Central Africa, West Africa, but they talk about it from the perspective of South Africa. And so they're using the idea of Ubuntu, right, which is a Southern African idea. Basically, it says that we are, therefore I am, therefore we are, right? This symbiotic relationship between the individual and the collective and the individual. Raises the question of that, there's a Sutu proverb that says, moto ke moto kabato, which talks about that your humanity is attested to and restated by how humanely you treat your neighbor. So that our humanity is something that is tied to the way in which we operationalized humanity. And this is what our ancestors have been teaching us. This is what great Africans have been doing. So when you look at these great African leaders, like an Nkrumah, uh, then we begin to start thinking about what is it that our roles are. What are we going to be doing to follow in those footsteps, right? That Ghana, the place, is not where the ancient uh, Ghana Empire is from. Ghana Empire is up where Mali is, but Ghana is Ghana where it is today because Nkrumah and maybe a group of other folks renamed the country from the Gold Coast to an African name. And so we have to look at the value in those things and talk about them, right? Who are the other people whom were inspired by that kind of thinking? And there's a push across the continent by lots of actually younger folks who are pushing and thinking the revival of a Pan-Africanist idea, right? And so then there's Pan-African talk all across the continent in different ways, in different formats, whether it's in currency and in regionalism and all these different things to develop a new way of thinking and doing that these brothers and sisters are pushing the envelope for. But they're doing so on the shoulders of those who came before them. It's like if we look at the Ramesses statue, right? Ramesses the Great. We have oftentimes people will say that he tore down his father's thing. He's building over him. He's making his things on top of his father's things because he's trying to outdo his father. I say you have a cultural misinterpretation of it, right? That Ramesses was building his edifice on his father's edifice, and that he was building on the shoulders and the essence of what his father brought to the table. So what are you building on the essence of your father, right? I'm building on the essence of my father's shoulders, right? So my father, I always saw him cleaning up the neighborhood. If there's something was there, he'd pick it up, he'd keep moving. He wouldn't, he may say something to one of the neighbors, but also then he wouldn't wait for them to do it. And so I do that today, building on the shoulders of my father. Whose shoulders are you building on? What are the things that you're doing to push the envelope for where you are and how you think and operationalize your way and space and living in the world? Go back to an inventor, Elijah McCoy, right? Elijah McCoy was a great inventor. Invented lots of different things for trains and how to oil different parts on the train, and that wasn't able to be done before. And so when you had what he came up with, then you had the real McCoy, right? We also have some contemporary folks. A friend of mine who is a professor at John Jay College, John Jay University, I think it was college. Dr. Janice Johnson Diaz, right? And she runs an organization called Grassroots Community Foundation, and they've done some great work. That she has a recent book that came out on parenting, but she got to that book from her work trying to help African girls grow up in a healthy place, right? And they had a program that was looking at how to have young girls to be self-assured, how to have young girls to develop social action plans and to do great things. And her daughter and other young ladies in the program have done some great, marvelous things. But once again, it took someone to step outside their own comfort zone, to think selflessly, to push the envelope and create space for other people, and to make a way for those people to be successful in other ways. Those young folks to grow up to be powerful women in the world, right? And so those are some of the things that other folks have done. You have Queen Afua and my wife. They do a whole thing with sacred women, and they have that these women are empowered, self-empowered to do things, and that they push the envelope on that because there's creating space for women who may have some trials or tribulations to move through those things, right? My wife does a whole thing on helping women to have natural childbirths through something called birthing from within, and all these different things that these sisters are doing, that we go back and ask who are the great leaders, that the great leaders oftentimes are around you, but you don't call on them, right? You're looking for Malcolm, and it's okay to look for Malcolm. It's okay to look for Imhotep. It's okay to look for Sarah Leaf Johnson, but who can you touch? Who's in your midst? And when you reach that person, do you are you appreciative for what they bring to the table? Are you additive to what they bring to the table, or are you subtracting? Right? I mean, we could be either way. We could either be additive or subtracting, or we could be nonplussed. That means that we could just move on and do our own thing and not contribute in any kind of way. But sometimes that is antithetical to your own very being. And so then all of these stories we've had about all these different people are people and places and things for us to look at to say, who are the folks that are enabling us to be great, right? Is it Imhotep? Is it Marcus Garvey? Is it Jomo Kenyatta with the Mau Mau, right? Is it Ya Santiwa? Is it the Queen Nanny of Jamaica? Is it the folks from the Palmeiras in Brazil, right? Or is it someone else, right? Could it be that you're inspired or moved by spiritual leaders who were maybe once kings? You look at Shango, or you look at Yemenya, or you look at Kanini, or you look at all these different spiritual forces that make us up to be who we are. Once again, we're not who we are in isolation. We are who we are because of the collective folks around us, and the folks who we see that we're talking about here today, who are great. You go to a presentation like this sometimes, and they may just give you a whole bunch of names. And I mean, that's good. But my question to you is, how do we take that essence of what they've done and be great ourselves? How do you be great? What makes you great? What did you learn from the person that you were watching? So I go to speeches sometimes, and I don't always go to hear what people are saying. I go to see and understand and learn how they're saying what they're saying, because I want to be a better connector with my audience. I want to be a better connector with folks and people. And so I listen and strive to hear the ways in which they connect. Like in our midst right here in New Jersey, you have a great brother, Larry Ham, who's great at connecting with the people and has a great way of understanding and recalling history. He has a great, almost perfect memory of things that have happened 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago. So that's a powerful tool. But he also has a great way of connecting with folks. And so what is it that you're doing, and how do you connect with folks, right? Many of us don't even know that while Obama was in office, the former Governor General of Canada was a sister, right? So that here we had an African president in the U.S., and we had an African who was the Governor General in Canada at the same time. Go figure. But this is a picture of her. So great African leaders, right? Here's Queen Afua, who is the founder of the Global City of Wellness Institute, and she wrote the book Heal Thyself. Maybe it's called Woman Heal Thyself, and I think she has another one, Man Heal Thyself. And she's done great things over the years, 40 plus years now, looking at holistic healing and teaching women about themselves and about the world around them, couched within the context of an African-centered reality. And really, I interviewed her. I have a TV show called The Pulse, and I interviewed her on the Post. She was actually my first guest on the Post, and so we talked about how she got to being who she was, and the experiences that she had, and the illnesses that she had, and then she talks about the folks who helped her to move beyond those illnesses, and then she utilized that to begin to educate and help other people to heal themselves. And so those are the things that we can do. And we have to just step forward and be selfless, right? I said before, maybe I didn't define the word. I talked about iwapele. Iwapele is good character, right? So what is your good character? I said also before, I talked about um, merunephra, which is divine speech. It's not just the words that you say, but how you say the words you say. Right? So those things are important for us to look at, conceptualize, and think as we're going through this place that we're in, to be the people who we're supposed to be, and that we need to be. Right? We're the ones that our ancestors have been waiting for. And I already mentioned Sarah Leaf, President Ellen Johnson, Sarah Leaf. And then you had the Prime Minister, Portia Lucretia Simpson Miller, who was the Prime Minister of Jamaica from 2006 to 2007, and then also again from, I think it's 2016 to 2017. Right? So you had these sisters who are out there doing things, pushing the envelope, trying to think and do differently. And the question is, what are you willing to do and think differently? And then you have this, I have a typo there, that you have this monument. This is the Renaissance monument. And the reason it's there is because I just wanted us to think about, what are we doing to memorialize our movement forward. Dr. Leonard Jeffries, who is another great African leader, he often says, when you see these, talks about that, that the African man has his queen and the baby, but they're looking to the West, and they're waiting. They're looking for us to do great things and to connect back with the continent. And so then that's the piece that we need to think about. And I'm going to leave you with this. And that is that when we think about all the people we've seen and the concepts that we've had, and you see these pyramids, right? These great pyramids, and around there's some Tekkens and the Sphinx and other stuff. The question actually for you and for us, though, is that what pyramids are you building today? What pyramids are you building today? That is, what are you doing today? What are we doing today that in 1,000 years, that in 100 years, in 3,000 years, that people are going to look back and say, man, those brothers and sisters were doing some dynamite things in 2020, and here's the 2022, and here's the evidence of what they did. What evidence are we leaving behind? What greatness are we leaving behind for those folks to come after us to see and say, what is your legacy? I mean, part of that legacy is your children, but what edifices are we leaving? What buildings are we building? What traditions are we creating? We can't just rely on the traditions of the past. That we build on the traditions of the past. Because the traditions of the past, that today, in terms of environment, in terms of social conditions, computers were not there. All of these things that are here today, we have to understand that we have a responsibility today to create the leaders of today, but also as they were creating them, and you're one of them, and I'm one of them, that we have to say that we've got to leave something for the next generation. And I want to know, what pyramids are you building today? Thank you very much. I'm Dr. Akil Khalfani. And, please check out our website, akilkhalfani.com. Join us. I have a bunch of stuff I do at the Africana Institute and around the world. We travel the world because that's how we learn our place in the world. We want to be like Brother Runoko Rashidi, traveling around, finding all the places and spaces that African people have done things around the world, and contributing back to those things that we've done in places that you didn't expect us to be, in places other folks didn't expect us to be. But we're here. We're not going anywhere. We're going to continue to evolve and move forward and create great agendas, places, people, and things. And we need all of you to figure out what your place is in that, and what markers you're going to be leaving behind that are going to say to people in 20, I would say in 2050, that the people in 2020 did some great things. In 2023, that the people in 2022 did some amazing things. In 2070, and I mean, sorry, in 2700, people are going to look back and say, man, the people in the 2022 did some amazing things, and we're here to build on their shoulders. Let somebody build on your shoulders, on my shoulders, and let us continue to do greatness. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Khalfani, so much for a wonderful presentation. Certainly, the message is one that resounds with me, as I am sure it will resound with many of our viewers, in so much as the key of the importance to answer the question, what foundations are we laying? What are we doing today so that tomorrow our shoulders can withstand the pressure upon which others can stand upon us? And so I certainly am thankful that you not only gave us insights into the historical elements of the great African leaders, but really the messaging, the narrative that we are those great leaders. And thereby we have not only greatness within us, but we have a great responsibility to carry that forward. One of the questions that came up, I want to bring to you. And again, folks, if you would like to join us in this conversation, you can drop any questions that you have in the chat, and we will select from them for Dr. Khalfani to answer live during this session now. So one question that we received comes from one of our very own, Brother John Brinkley. He's one of our yoke fellows at the Frontiers International Plainfield Area Club, and he asks, who would you identify as the top 3 historic leaders of significance, whether top or most notable to you? Top 3 historic leaders of significance.
Yeah, well, so first and foremost, in my agenda for me is the person, one of the people who kind of really changed and shaped my thinking, and I would say that's Malcolm X, right? When I look at how Malcolm X responded to critique and criticism, when I look at how Malcolm X was able to stay the course on the ideas that he was working on, when I look at his evolution, right, that he was somebody who evolved his thinking and doing over time, that to me was a great example of some of the things that I strive to do, and ways in which I strive to do them. Other one is Harriet Tubman. Harriet Tubman to me was and is the legacy, the lore is an example of pushing up against some serious odds. I don't care if she made one trip, right? That to make that one trip, and then subsequently to then be willing to go back into the belly of the beast and free your family, when you could have just said, I'm free and I'm done with it. To me is the level of understanding of tenacity and heart and courage is insurmountable, right? You can't compare to that to me. And then the other, I would say, kind of a split for me when I think about just great thinkers and doers. I would say Shakanta Diop. As I look at the things that I've read and understood by Diop, but maybe I don't know Diop as well as I know of Malcolm. But when I'm just looking at Diop's ways of analyzing and pushing and the work over time, and as somebody who's got a doctorate, I know that his fight to get his doctorate was intense, and mine was intense also. And so I understand that struggle, and that struggle, to me, is vital for us to be where we are. And then I just have to put the rest of them in kind of a collective sentiment, and that is all the brothers and sisters from from Haiti, right?
Mm.
Dessalines, Toussaint, all of the brothers and sisters who fought against the most crazy odds, but won, right? Uh, they didn't have as many guns, and they didn't have ships and all the other stuff, but their sense of spirit and their entrusting in the creator as they knew the creator and their ancestors, and their knowledge of herbs and of the things around them were the things that enabled them to succeed in the face of insurmountable obstacles. And we talk about other people who were great military geniuses, but we have to look at the folks in Haiti as great military geniuses because they fought something that they fought an unwinnable fight, right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. And one of the greatest, or at least most remarkable components or aspects of all three of those individuals and the legacy that they lived and left, uh, and of course, the fourth being the great people of Africa, Haiti in general, um, during that time, is that they lived what it meant to lift as we rise. The example you gave with Harriet Tubman, not only to gain her freedom by way of fighting and overcoming and going against odds that were, as you stated, insurmountable, but to return to that point of your pain to save others, sacrifice your freedom and risk this newfound victory that you've amassed to go back and save others. It's something that I think needs to resound with all of us, because as we live against the odds today and we overcome the challenges that seek to beset us, it certainly takes this type of mindset of collectivism to
Mm-hmm.
really allow us to truly overcome as a people.
Most certainly.
So another question for you would be, what do you think for the African diaspora today is one of the key priorities that we need to focus on?
Yeah, I mean, I think our key priority hasn't changed. One, and I'll make a couple of them. One is that we need to unify as African people. I don't care if it's you're from Haiti, Jamaica, Brazil, Cuba, the U.S. Um, England, wherever you are today, Japan, China's Africans all over the world and on the continent, and all the places on the continent. That if we were to bring both our resources and our intellectual strength together. I mean, think about how many, we had tons of medical and scientists here in the United States and in Nigeria, right? Lots and lots of scholars in Nigeria. And all over the place. I was in Burkina Faso. I met the president and people in different departments at the University of Ouagadougou. And then I went to South Africa and met with folks in different departments there. Lots of great thinkers around the world. We just have to, we have to learn to talk to each other and work with each other. How many sociologists in the United States are in communication with sociologists in Africa, in Jamaica? We don't even really kind of have that level of great respect for our brothers and sisters in other places because we've been colonized not to do so. So we need to decolonize our thinking to get to that place. And the second one I would believe is it's kind of built on that one, but we need to pull together our financial resources. If we had better usage of our financial resources, that we would have a better way in place in the world, because we have inadequate resources individually, but collectively we have great resources.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Dr. Khalfani, again, thank you so much for joining us today, sharing so much of yourself, of your experiences, and of course, of your expertise, so that we can continue to advance our community through service. So we certainly look forward to engaging with you again in the future. But again, thank you. And as we prepare to close, I just want to share, of course, with you that I'm certain is the sentiment of everyone who's watching. This was certainly a phenomenal presentation, one that was eye-opening, but one also that inspires us in many ways to do what we oftentimes view as impossible. But collectively, we can overcome anything.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And I'm honored to be here once again. I want to thank you all. Thank my brother, John Brinkley, and everyone else who invited me to be here today. And, as I'll just close with this, that, I'm running for office and, as you've already mentioned the website and stuff, that to bring about change, we got to work together. And so, our slogan is that we are the change. And as I run for U.S. Congress, I need people to come on board to help us to move that agenda forward. So I'm asking people to reach out to us and be engaged in that process so that we can collectively actually make the change happen. So thank you.
Yeah, definitely a very good point, folks. If you have not yet done so, register to vote.
Yes.
Also, if you have not yet done so, I invite you and encourage you to check out Dr. Akil Khalfani, the website where you can find information on him. And of course, the platform upon which he stands for this campaign is www.akilkhalfani.com. Go there, sign up, follow, donate, contribute, do whatever it is that you can to really help make a difference so that we can change the narrative, change the landscape, and change the world as we know it by having representation that truly represents who we are and who we wish to be by way of the change that we can make. Thank you again, Dr. Khalfani. Everyone else, thank you again for joining us today. We are the Frontiers International Plainfield Area Club. I do invite you to follow us online. You can do so at any one of our social media platforms. We are on Facebook and on YouTube, and the handle is at Plainfield Frontiers Club. If you would like to help us in our initiatives to provide advancement through service, you can do so by donating. We are a 501c3 organization, and you can donate, and all donations that are made to our scholarship fund or any of the initiatives that we have underway are tax deductible. You can do so, again, donating by Zelle at 732-470-4207, or by PayPal, just.marshall@verizon.net, or you can simply mail a check or money order to P.O. Box 428, Plainfield, New Jersey, 07061. Again, thank you for joining us. I hope to see you again next month. We do have these lectures forthcoming. We will post a schedule on our Facebook page. So please, again, connect with us so that you can stay in the know and you can be a part of the change that we are making here in our country and more locally within our community. Again, we are Frontiers International Plainfield Area Club. We stand for advancement through service, and we are grateful that you came. Enjoy your day and enjoy the rest of your weekend. Lift as we rise.